Today on the Playbook Podcast, Attorney General Pam Bondi is on the Hill for what should be a blockbuster oversight hearing, and we'll tell you what we'll be watching. The US military could start arriving in Chicago as soon as today, as Donald Trump considers using the Insurrection Act. And the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, will be back in the Oval Office. Hello, I'm Jack Blanchard.
And I'm Dasha Burns. It is Tuesday, October 7th.
And this is the Playbook Podcast. And I just want to say, for all the people that wrote in or texted me after I found a wolf cricket in my basement the other week.
That was the most relatable thing we talked about on this podcast.
I've just found two more, and they're both dead. It's at what point is this a plague of crickets, Dasha, or should I be worried by this, or is this completely normal?
Killed by you or natural causes, or is it a mystery?
Totally killed by me. Absolutely obliterated by me. Yes.
Well done, Jack. This is DC stiffening your spine. This is your training ground.
Not all heroes wear capes. Anyway, once I've finished watching insects scurrying around my basement, I and most of DC will be watching Pam Bondi this morning, who is up before the Senate Judiciary Committee at 9 a.m. for the first time since her confirmation hearing way back in January. And oh my goodness, Dasha, there's quite a lot to talk about, right?
Oh, yes.
Pam Bondi. Okay, so basically I've got a whole list of things that the Senate needs to talk to the Attorney General about. But before we start going into the detail, I just wanted to talk about herself a little bit in general terms, because she is one of the most interesting figures in the Trump administration, I think. We have never seen in modern times an attorney general quite so political as this, right? She is breaking the mold for what we've seen as an attorney general, certainly over the last few decades, in her sort of overtly political approach to the job.
So, Jack, regardless of whether you think that, this is a good change or a bad change in the relationship between the DOJ and the White House, the one thing that everyone I've talked to across the partisan political spectrum agrees upon is that this administration has fundamentally changed that relationship between the administration and the Justice Department. And it's a kind of change that is going to have ripple effects for a long time to come, because so many of these norms have just completely been appended here.
Exactly. As looking back, it's certainly since Nixon and the whole Watergate thing, the DOJ is supposed to have been relatively independent of the White House. It doesn't look very independent at the moment, it has to be said. And the Attorney General is supposed to be a slightly more non-partisan figure, although some people will laugh at that with some of the people who've had the job, but it's definitely supposed to be. One of our excellent colleagues, Ann Cush, has written a whole thing on our website this morning. He sat down and watched every single bit of TV that Pam Bondi has done since she became Attorney General for this column. Right. Do you have are you impressed? First of all,
I'm impressed. I'm terrified for the amount of television news he's consumed.
I know. I don't know what sort of state he's in now, but anyway, he did this. He counted 30 appearances by Pam Bondi on Fox News alone. Right. She has only been AG for 34, 35 weeks. So she is on Fox every week. That is not the sort of thing straight away that would be normal for a typical attorney general.
No, but it does make a lot of sense under this administration. I mean, she knows Trump world. She's a Florida girl who has been in those circles for a long time, and she knows just how much driving a narrative is so important to this president. He needs to see his people out there telling the story of this administration and hammering the talking points and the messaging that he wants to see out there. And she is communicating with him as well. When he says, I don't know, that's the Justice Department. Well, he does know, because she's out there and she's telling the American public and him, this is exactly what I'm doing. And it's as much for the audience of one as it is for the rest of us.
Absolutely. And you've got to remember, under Trump 1.0, he had attorney generals who triggered the Russiagate investigation. He had an attorney general who refused to investigate the election, so-called election fraud, as Trump saw it. He had attorney generals who pushed back quite strongly against some of the things that Trump was doing, who initiated investigations that were incredibly unhelpful to him as president. It's really hard to imagine anything like that happening this time around.
Oh, absolutely. And one source that I was talking to, who was in the first Trump administration, told me that the difference in vibe, for lack of a better word, of an administration that knows they are not constantly watching their backs because of the DOJ, it just completely changes how they feel they can function. Again, it is having an impact.
Absolutely. So I'm sure that maybe the top issue that senators will want to talk to Pam Bondi about today is this issue of the weaponization of the DOJ, which Democrats will say we have seen explicitly happening this year, and which Republicans will say was happening under previous Democrat administrations and is now stopping. Let's start with this year because it's Pam Bondi who's supposed to be answering the questions about what's happening right now. We have seen the President of the United States this year publicly direct his Attorney General to prosecute his enemies. That has happened right in public. We've watched him write it on Truth Social, Pam : why aren't, essentially, why aren't we prosecuting these people? Sure enough, a few days later, James Comey, former FBI director, is indeed being pursued. And in fact, he happens to be in court tomorrow. Letitia James, the New York attorney who went after Trump, is also being pursued. We don't yet know whether she's going to face charges. There are others. In fact, one of the others, Adam Schiff, is on this committee and will be grilling Pam Bondi this morning whilst claiming that she is pursuing him as a political opponent of Trump. So that dynamic's pretty extraordinary to
And
imagine.
there are plenty of other opponents of the president that his supporters are constantly hammering the administration and the DOJ. I mean, Pam Bondi has actually gotten a ton of flack from the MAGA base for not going hard enough against Trump's enemies.
So true. And actually, whenever you see her popping up on X or her clips popping up on X, it's always followed by a deluge of MAGA people really hating on her. She's a very controversial figure in that world because, as you say, they think she's weak and she hasn't done nearly enough. And I guess
she's actually in a very tough spot for that reason because she's never doing enough for Trump's most ardent supporters. But she is, of course, breaking a ton of norms in a way that a lot of people think is out of hand.
Yeah, it's an impossible balancing act she's trying to pull off. I mean, that message that Trump sent on Truth Social, which I still kind of think like maybe he didn't mean to send publicly, the way it was written, it looked awfully like it was supposed to be a DM.
I try to avoid going down the rabbit hole of dissecting the psychology of Truth Social posts.
You're right. It's a bad place to go, especially at this time of the morning. Either way, like that was an extraordinary moment in a year of extraordinary moments. We haven't really seen a president overtly doing that and saying go after these people. But what Republicans on the committee are going to say today is no, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about what was happening under Joe Biden and Barack Obama when they were president, because they say that was the real weaponization, and that will be their way of moving off this rather awkward topic of what the president blatantly did before our eyes. And hey, Pam, let's talk about something else instead that we're all much more comfortable talking about. And we're going to hear a lot of that today because last night, in incredibly helpful timing for Pam Bondi, the chair of the committee, Chuck Grassley, released this FBI document from 2022 showing that the FBI scoured the metadata of some Republican senators while they were investigating the Jan 6th, while they were carrying out the Jan 6th investigation. And Republicans are up in arms about this now, and we're going to hear a lot about that today.
Yeah, this really gives a lifeline to Pam Bondi because it gives something very fresh for Republicans on that committee to latch onto and to use their time on, and for Pam Bondi to be able to, what Trump often looks for in his team during these sorts of hearings is can they hold their own and create some moments in the combativeness with Democrats that are questioning them, and can they again bring his narrative to the position of power there.
What's interesting to me about that relationship is, as you said, Pam Bondi's come under a lot of stick from the right, and we'll get into a couple of other issues she has as well. But Trump when people around him say to you, oh, he loves Pam Bondi, like he always sticks up for her. Do you get that sense as well in the White House?
Yeah, he really likes her, and the people in the West Wing that are closest to him, the inner circle, she has some staunch defenders there that are consistently protecting her, defending her, and holding her up as someone that is, and so far we've seen this, that is extremely loyal, that is not going to step out of line, and that is going to make sure that she is completely aligned with what the president and his fiercest allies want to see out of her.
Few other big issues that are going to come up, I'm sure, this morning. Top of my list says Epstein. Pam Bondi, of course, one of maybe her biggest mistakes, I would say, since she's been Attorney General, certainly in terms of the right, was announcing she had these Epstein files on her desk, handing out these binders to various right-wing influencers that then turned out to not have any new information in, and then suddenly saying, actually, there aren't any Epstein files at all. And she's come under so much grief for the way she handled that. And, the Democrats know that, and they're going to try and push that bruise today.
Right, and Republicans are going to try to avoid it. I mean, in many ways, a lot of her last couple of months of work and the hammering of the crime issue and everything that you've seen out of the FBI as well has been sort of to make up for, again, for that audience of one, of what a lot of people in MAGA world and even the president himself saw as not the best way of handling a politically problematic situation for him in the Epstein case.
She kind of pulled the pin out of the grenade by mistake, and then blew up the whole summer to the White House. The other issue that she's come under pressure from the rights, this is a third one now, was over free speech. You'll remember a few weeks ago, Dasha, after the murder of Charlie Kirk, she gave that interview where she started distinguishing between what she called free speech and hate speech. And she said that we will absolutely target you, go after you if you're targeting anyone with hate speech. And again, all those free speech absolutists in the Republican Party and in the conservative right were like, what on earth is she talking about?
Right. It was a faux pas in the language used. Although I will say that in the aftermath of that, people like J.D. Vance and plenty of Trump's supporters and allies inside and outside the White House have started using the phrase consequence culture, which, I don't think is altogether so out of line from what Pam
Right.
Bondi was saying.
They've all done a bit of a U-turn on that issue. But again, you can see Democrats taking the chance to try and push her on it. There's loads of other stuff as well. All the various DOJ cases around immigration that we've seen this year, the DOJ cases around these incursions by the military into American cities. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But again, there's DOJ at the forefront of many of these cases. And the other one is Venezuela, and that the targeted killings of people in boats who the Trump administration says are drug dealers, and they're allowed to just kill them in international waters. We've seen repeated times now. Like, where is the DOJ on that, and what opinion have DOJ given on that to the White House to make them to convince them that this is somehow legal to just take these people out?
Yeah, that's really a story that has been sort of flying under the radar, but is consistently an issue that folks are sounding the alarm on, and I think it's going to gain increasing attention and traction potentially out of this hearing.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about something else. Whilst Pam Bondi is on all of your screens all morning, I've no doubt it'll be wall-to-wall coverage on the cable news channels. Keep an eye on Chicago, because we've been saying for weeks, haven't we, that the military could be headed that way as the next big city being targeted. Well, it looks like that could happen as soon as today, because unlike in Portland, Oregon, where a judge has for now barred the deployment of the National Guard, judge yesterday did not immediately stop the deployment of the National Guard in Chicago, said we're going to leave it a couple of days, get some more evidence, have a hearing on Thursday. So for now, it would seem they can be deployed. And our understanding is, Dasha, they're on their way. So so we may see National Guard start popping up in Chicago for the first time today.
Yeah, and this was really the first city that the president latched onto in this idea of deploying the military on the issue of crime. It's also where the Chicago mayor just recently signed an executive order to prohibit ICE from organizing in certain areas. He's calling them ICE-free zones, which I was hoping to ask at the briefing yesterday. Caroline Levitt kept it really short. I'm very curious how the Trump administration is going to respond to a city trying to use its own authority to prevent ICE from doing some of their work, at least in certain spaces. That's certainly got to get the administration frustrated, and we've seen that the more these localities antagonize the White House, the more they sort of want to fight back.
Right. And so we have these ongoing court cases in Portland, Oregon, and the one in Los Angeles. We don't have a final decision on whether that deployment was legal. Now we have this one ongoing in Chicago, and maybe the troops headed in today or tomorrow before we even get a hearing.
We've heard from Stephen Miller time and again getting very angry with these district courts, with lower courts that rule against the administration. I think what we saw with Portland was the closest that the administration has gotten to sort of flagrantly flouting a court order where they said you can't send Oregon National Guard. They say, okay, we'll send National Guard from another state. Obviously, that's been that's been paused as well. But you can kind of see that the administration is trying to push everything to the Supreme Court. They're like, district courts, they'll get pissed at the decisions, but they're really just waiting for the stuff to go up to the Supreme Court, and they're trying to just do as much as they can until it gets to that highest court in the land.
Agree, and just probing, trying different things, see what works, what doesn't, see what the limits of the power they've got actually are. And of course, the other thing that's important to say on this issue, Dasha, is that Trump kind of has a wild card or a joker in his pocket here, which is the Insurrection Act of 1807, which explicitly gives the president permission to deploy military for domestic use in certain circumstances. And Trump was asked in the White House yesterday whether he would consider using it. And he said, yeah, he'd consider using it if he thought it was necessary. We've already heard Stephen Miller referring to these things as an insurrection. He's very much at the forefront of trying to frame these situations for the White House, right? So you could see that happening. And it's been a long time, since it was the 1990s, since a president last used this pretty controversial but pretty powerful piece of legislation. It's hardly beyond belief that Trump would do it.
No, it's not at all beyond belief, especially because it was during the campaign that they first started dropping the sort of hints at using the Insurrection Act. It wasn't as obvious as it is now, but this has been in the works. This has been in the vernacular, certainly behind the scenes for quite some time now. And the rhetoric that the president uses. And initially, we thought that he might consider using it for border reasons, but now it looks like they're trying to find this new application here.
While all that is going on, President Trump has an esteemed visitor in the Oval Office today. The Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney will be in town at about 11:30, and we'll see the usual spray in the Oval Office with the two leaders. They get on pretty well, actually, Dasha, as far as we can see. But they've got a lot to talk about in terms of trade, because Canada is not happy with the tariff situation.
No, like a lot of countries, they're not happy, and of course the president once again brought up the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state. He just can't let go of that one.
He mentioned it last week, didn't he? In his very long speech to the generals. Just throw that one in there.
And I'm sure we will hear about it again. But yeah, I mean the trade relationship is so important there. I think that's going to be top of the agenda, absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see how Carney works that charm and the convivial relationship they seem to have, to see if he can get some better terms for his people.
Look, before we go, want to mention one other thing from the Playbook newsletter, Dasha. This Friday probably has a big red ring, or maybe a big Sharpie ring around it in Donald Trump's diary, because this Friday they'll be announcing this year's winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, which of course appears to be the thing that Donald Trump wants more in life than anything else. Yesterday we got the first Nobel Prize of the year, because there's lots of them. It's not just the peace one, and it was awarded to two Americans and a Japanese scientist in the field of medicine. But Fred Ramsdell, one of the Americans who has won the award, they haven't been able to find him because he's, quote, living his best life on an off-the-grid hiking holiday in Idaho. No one can find him. This guy is living with no mobile phone, backpacking around Idaho, picking huckleberries or whatever you do in deepest, darkest Idaho at this time of year, and doesn't know he's won the Nobel Prize.
I don't know if that makes me want to take it away from him, or if that makes me think he deserves it even more.
I think there's a reasonable chance that if Trump does one day win the Nobel Prize, they won't have any trouble tracking him down to tell him to you. Dasha, thank you for being here. Thanks everyone for listening. That's all we got time for. We've got loads more news and analysis in today's Playbook newsletter, which you can find at politico.com/playbook. And we will be back as always tomorrow. Have a great day.